Did you know that Gremlins originally tried to use monkeys to create its iconic creatures? But when they put a mask on the test monkey, it freaked out and shit everywhere. Gremlins turns 40 years old this week, so here are some things I bet you never knew about it. The concept of Gremlins goes back to the 1920s, but the screenplay was an original story by director Chris Columbus, the same guy who would later go on to make Mrs. Doubtfire and the first two Harry Potter films. Columbus was inspired by the mice that he heard skittering around in his apartment at night, and so he thought that small but scary creatures might be an interesting basis for a horror film. He wrote the script on spec to show off his writing talents, and never expected it to be made. But Steven Spielberg got a hold of it and said it was one of the most original things he had read in years. And so he bought it. Spielberg initially considered hiring Tim Burton to direct, but instead went with Joe Dante due to his experience with horror comedy. The script was originally much darker and included scenes where the Gremlins killed Billy's mother and her head rolled down the stairs, a scene where the Gremlins ate Billy's dog, and a scene where the Gremlins attacked a McDonald's and ate all of the people inside rather than the burgers. Also, Gizmo was originally supposed to transform into the Gremlin stripe, but Spielberg nixed this idea because he thought audiences would want the cute Gizmo present throughout the entire movie. Kevin Bacon, Ralph Macchio, Emilio Estevez, and Judd Nelson all auditioned for Billy, but Zach Galligan got the part based on his chemistry read with Phoebe Cates. Tom Hanks actually auditioned for the part of Gerald, the bank manager that Judge Reinhold ended up playing, but he didn't get it because he looked too much like Zach Galligan. And it's probably good that he didn't get it because that freed him up to do Splash. Prolific voice actor Frank Welker did the voice of Stripe, and he actually suggested Howie Mandel for Gizmo. Yes, that's right, that Howie Mandel voices Gizmo. Their dialogue was mostly invented by the voice actors, who were trying to match the physical actions of what the puppets were doing. Spielberg has a cameo in the film as Man riding a recumbent bicycle, and Looney Tunes pioneer Chuck Jones cameos as Mr. Jones, Billy's drawing mentor. After the aforementioned failure of trying to use monkeys to be Gremlins, Dante ended up going with puppets and marionettes. Designer Chris Wallace created two different designs of the Mogwai that were a bit more puppy-like before landing on the final version. Because the Gizmo puppets were so small, they were constantly breaking down, and this really frustrated the crew. But Dante insisted on keeping Gizmo small because it was so cute. The crew then made a list of horrible things to do to Gizmo as a joke, one of them being throw darts at him, which ended up in the movie as an inside gag. That said, there were some larger puppets created for the purpose of visual effects, including the scene in which Gizmo multiplies, and those newly born Mogwai were actually balloons. Prior to its international release, the movie was actually altered for each international version, incorporating regional music and humor for each one. And Howie Mandel even recorded his lines in a bunch of different languages, including German. The production budget came out to a total of $11 million. Gremlins came out on June 8th, 1984, the same weekend as Ghostbusters. And it made $12.5 million its opening weekend, coming in second place to Ghostbusters, which made $13.6 million. Gremlins would go on to make $148 million total worldwide, becoming the fourth highest grossing movie of 1984. It was initially met with criticism, but has become a classic over time. Alongside Temple of Doom, Gremlins partially inspired the PG-13 rating to be invented, because parents who took their young kids to those movies got a bit more violence than their PG ratings let on. Spielberg confirmed in 2004, "I created the problem, and I also supplied the solution. I invented the rating." Joe Dante returned to direct the sequel, Gremlins 2, The New Batch, in 1990, and with writer Charles S. Haas, intentionally made it much more comedic and cartoony. He wanted to be a satire of sequels and Gremlins itself. It bombed at the box office. Over time, the Gremlins have become pretty recognizable Warner Brothers intellectual property, appearing in multiverse movies like the Lego Batman movie, Space Jam: A New Legacy, and Teen Titans Go. The Scottish post-rock band Mogwai is named after the creatures from the movie, but the band says that their name has no significant meaning and that they always intended to change it. In 2017, original writer Chris Columbus confirmed that he had written a Gremlins 3 that was, quote, twisted and dark. But years later, there haven't been many updates on the project.